So let's discuss Valtteri Bottas. This dude is a bit of a curious case. In the top team of the top flight of motorsport, Bottas has acquired an array of Grand Prix victories, and often celebrates them with the most passive-aggressive victory speeches of all time.
To whom it may concern, you.
Bruh. But while no one can deny that Valtteri is fast, and that no one can take away his 9 Grand Prix victories, I've got a question for all of you watching this. Is Bottas a worthy adversary for 7-time world champion and teammate Lewis Hamilton?
Nope.
Okay, that much is clear. But why has opinion swung this way? How come Bottas is looked upon as a lackey, as a lapdog, as a B-plus driver? And is this even true given what he's been able to prove in a Grand Prix car? I guess, given his performance relative to George Russell last weekend, we're all asking questions. Namely, what is the deal with this guy? So let's first delve over Valtteri's F1 career to date to gauge exactly where he is as an F1 driver, whether Mercedes made the right call in hiring him, and whether he can legitimately challenge for a world title. And by now, some of you will be looking at me like I'm on some kind of drugs. But please just hear me out. So Bottas made his F1 debut in 2013, replacing the outgoing Bruno Senna, and returning to racing after foregoing the 2012 season entirely. Racing for the Williams team, Bottas would be paired up with Pastor Maldonado. Now, as much as we take the piss out of Maldonado, he was a fast driver when he wasn't being himself. Qualifying that year leaned more in favour of Bottas, with a standout performance in Canada being the highlight of the season for Williams, given the car was only slightly less rubbish than actual garbage. Nonetheless, Bottas continued to outperform Maldonado for the remainder of the season, leaving Pastor no alternative but to fill his final days within the team with a few more crashes for them to remember him by. But while Maldonado would bugger off to terrorise Lotus, Bottas remained with Williams, this time paired up with Felipe Massa, who had opted against being Fernando Alonso's lapdog for another season at Ferrari. Throughout the year, Bottas had the measure of Massa in qualifying and would finish ahead of him in the overall standings. This would be aided through podium finishes in Austria, Silverstone, Hockenheim, Spa, Sochi, and Abu Dhabi. So Valtteri was beginning to prove himself as a genuine talent in the top flight of motorsport. The next 2 years at Williams weren't quite as fruitful, as the performance of the car began to recede like Teo Fabi's hairline, although he would still outperform teammate Massa on a regular basis. Heading into the 2017 season, Bottas was initially meant to remain with Williams, although this time he would be paired up with Sir Lancelot. However, in the Mercedes camp, something was happening.
Yeah, so for me, thank you all for coming. For me, it's a very special day today. I've decided to end my Formula 1 career.
Yep. 2016 world champion Nico Rosberg had ditched Mercedes and fled to retirement, leaving the German manufacturer one driver short. There were a few options to replace him, although it would ultimately come down to Valtteri and Pascal Wehrlein. The case for Wehrlein was strong given that he was a DTM champion, he was a Mercedes prodigy, and he put on some very good performances in his first year of Formula 1, especially given he was driving for Manor. However, with Valtteri's performances within the Williams team, and his experience with F1 machinery compared to Wehrlein, the choice was obvious to Mercedes. On January 16th, 2017, it was announced that Valtteri would be driving alongside Hamilton for the 2017 season onwards, and was now in a car which he could use to fight for a world championship. So in his 4 years driving for the top team on the grid, how has he done? Some will point out that Valtteri is a driver for Saturday, and that his qualifying performances indicate that he is a worthy opponent for Hamilton. Is he though? Because in his time at Mercedes, the qualifying battle seems to be more in favour of Hamilton. In 2017, Hamilton won the battle 13-7, in 2018 he won it 15-6, in 2019 he won it 14-7, and heading into the last round of the 2020 season, the qualifying battle lay at 11-4 in favour of Hamilton, which is really strange, considering Bottas was generally thought of as Mr. Saturday. But it turns out that Bottas outqualifies Hamilton like Helio Castroneves pays his taxes. However, Hamilton does argue that while the qualifying battle is on his side, the margins between the two tend to be razor thin. And to his credit, that is true. So with this in mind, how has Valtteri done against Hamilton in the races? Well, in his debut race with the team back in 2017, he scored a podium which was kind of expected, although in the next race in China, he had a very odd spin which sent him down the pack and ended up finishing in P6. It was in the Bahrain Grand Prix, however, where Valtteri would secure his first ever pole position, and he would use this to his advantage by finishing behind Lewis again. I don't know. However, in the next race in Sochi, Valtteri would score his first Grand Prix victory and would win 2 more races that year in Abu Dhabi and in Austria. As well as this, he secured a slew of podiums throughout the year, although he was still well short of what Hamilton achieved throughout that year. That could be forgiven, however, given it was his first year in the team, but was this really the reason for the deficit to Hamilton? He endured a difficult 2018 which saw him go winless and finished 6th in the standings. However, when 2019 came about, Valtteri rocked up to the first round in Melbourne, armed with a finished beard and an extreme diet of porridge. Dubbed Bottas 2.0, he quickly made his mark by dominating the races and kicking off the year in the best possible way. In the first 5 races that year, he picked up 2 wins, 3 pole positions, and was right behind Hamilton in the standings. His demeanour and his form suggested that this was a new Valtteri that we were seeing, and that we would see the Finn duking it out with Hamilton for the title all year long. But of course, it didn't end up being that way. I mean, sure, he won a couple of races in Suzuka and Kota, but on paper, he was comprehensively beaten by #blessed. This all seems a bit disconcerting. However, attention has to be brought to Bottas's ill luck throughout the year, and that stuff is definitely present. This included a crappily timed safety car in Silverstone, front wing damage in Hungary, and a PU failure at Interlagos. Does it account for all of the lost ground to Hamilton? Probably not. But does this make him a bad driver for Mercedes? It depends on your perspective. On one side, Bottas is the driver that Mercedes want. A fast, reliable driver who is an effective wingman for Hamilton. And hey, when he's on it, he is as good as anyone else out there. And there have been plenty of occasions where he has outperformed Hamilton. But it's clear as to which driver is winning this war. And then there is the other side of the argument. Say we had a situation like 1999, where the main driver is taken out of commission. Would Bottas be able to challenge the likes of Max Verstappen if it were down between those two? Despite being in a superior car, could Bottas prevail, or is he just another Eddie Irvine?
I don't really like that.
And this isn't to say that Valtteri is a bad driver, because he is not. He has proven himself handy behind the wheel of a car, and is doing the job that's asked of him 95% of the time. And ultimately, I would hate to see Valtteri out of a seat. Some would consequently ask, well then who is a better option than him? Well, with how George Russell performed at last weekend's Sakhir Grand Prix, I think that question has been answered. And I'm sure in response, Valtteri would have this to say.
To whom it may concern, you.
And hey, you know what? Maybe, just maybe, Valtteri can prove us all wrong next year and win his first world title. This will either age like milk, or will be an amazing prediction. But I mean, I don't know, what do you reckon? Should Bottas stay, or should he go? Drop a comment below, subscribe to the channel if you're awesome, and always remember, keep it respectful, be wholesome, don't be a manus, and as always, I'll see you all later.
Let me tell you, wanna see you fly, way up in my sights. To the day I die, we're headed for the silver line. Let me tell you, wanna see you move, cause there's room for two. Every day, every night, we turn up to 9-9.